I'm going through my stats here, and we're having a Christmas in September here at the sawmill, and I'll show you what I mean by that. This is some of the first slabs going in the kiln today. This is 8/4 walnut live edge. It's about 20 inches wide, and we sawed this over a year ago, and it's been up here air drying ever since. And I did a quick moisture reading here this morning on it. As you can see right there, 15.5. So that's pretty good on the air drying. When you do these live edge slabs, you want them at least less than 25%, ideally less than 20%, before they go in the kiln when you're going to do air dried slabs like this. So we're at 15.5, so we're in really good shape right here. While I was uncovering my walnut stats here, it never fails, I kind of forget about what kind of wood I got stacked in here. This stuff's been here over a year. But check out these slabs here. These are 8/4 walnut slabs, live edge. They're just over 9 feet in length. And they're also butt matched, and you guys know what that means if you've been watching this channel for any time. You can see there's its brother right there beside it. And right here is the real prize in this crotch figure. Check that out. That's about 24 inches long there, and just nothing but good, nice figured walnut crotch figure right there. And we'll put a little bit of water on there here in just a second, give you an idea of what that looks like. And I don't know if I videoed sawing these logs up or not last year. I can't remember. Like I said before, I totally forgot about sawing these up and have them over here. By the looks of it, I think we're going to have about 2 or 3 pairs of these butt match slabs. We'll throw just a little bit of water on here before it goes in the kiln. This won't affect the moisture content at all of this wood. Just to give you guys an idea of how it's looking and what kind of figure we got. Does not get any better than that when it comes to black walnut, in my opinion, or pretty much sawmilling altogether. That is fantastic. Alright guys, real quick here, we've got the kiln ready to be loaded. I've got my supports here on the bottom to put the load on. We'll go over that next and how I space those. But real quick, I didn't go over this yesterday in the other video, but these fans right here and the importance of them and what their function is. Now when all fans are going in here, the 2 fans on top of the kiln and the 2 additional fans in the corner, I'm going to have a baffle on top of the lumber load, which means the airflow is going to be going over top of the wood toward the door, then coming back in through the wood stack. And what these 3 fans are going to do right here is I've got them turned around backwards. They're blowing toward this wall. That's going to help my overall process here on getting a continual flow of air. So when you think about it, with your fans pushing the air over top of the load is going to have some styrofoam, not styrofoam, but some leftover insulation from the walls on top of it. So the air is going to come over, it's going to come down, it's going to hit the doors and come down, come through the stack of wood that's being dried. And then with these fans being reversed, blowing toward this wall, that's going to help that air circulate all the way through the stack evenly. That's why I have 3 fans here on the front. Now this is just an additional thing you can do to this kiln to help it run even better. Now I believe these kilns will run just fine the way you get them with the kiln unit and the way this chamber is designed. But these fans are inexpensive, $15 a piece at Walmart or something like that. And you might get a year out of them, might get 6 months. We'll see how long they last. But for the for the decreased drying time that we'll probably get by adding these features, it's really a no-brainer just to throw them in here. So by adding these 3 fans on the floor here, spaced out throughout the stack, all the boards should dry at the same rate and be close to the same moisture content when the cycle's ended. And another important part here are these 4x4s here on the floor. These are regular store-bought 4x4s from Lowe's. I've got 8 of them lined up here, and they're about 14 inches from the actual kiln unit against the wall, so there's plenty enough clearance on the front. And they're about 2 feet from the door when the door shuts. And these are 4 foot long. Like I said, I've got 8 of them lined up, and they serve a very important purpose here. The reason I got 4x4s and not 2x4s or something else is so I can bring my skid steer up here with my pallet forks if I want to get underneath this load for taking it out, and easily have enough clearance on the bottom to lift up the load of lumber to take it out of here. So that's one purpose of them. Another purpose is the way I have them lined up. Now my floor joists are on 16-inch centers here for the floor of the kiln, and these 4x4s are lined up directly on top of the floor joist. You wouldn't want to put them on this area between the joist right here, because there's no support underneath this part of the floor right here besides just the plywood sheathing. By putting these 4x4s directly on top of the floor joist, that's the strongest part of this floor here on the structure. And also the stickers in the lumber stack, when I have the board stickered out on each layer, the stickers will line up perfectly, or as straight as I can get them, with these 4x4s. So when you think about it, the lumber stack's going to be on top of these 4x4s with all the stickers lined up with them, transferring the weight of the entire stack down through these 4x4s onto the floor joist. Therefore, you get a good solid stack, and it's not going to bow the floor or kind of make it out of being co-planar with everything else. That way everything stays nice and straight, because your wood's only going to dry as straight as the boards are stacked in here. If you got an uneven floor or some variances in it, you're going to have some bowed lumber when you're done. So that's really important here, is getting these 4x4s in here, getting them straight and getting them level right on top of your floor joist. Well, as you guys can see, we've about got the kiln loaded up now. It is September the 20th here this morning, and we're going to start it up this morning. I've got a few more layers to put on and it's finished. Just want to go over a few things on what kind of species you can dry and how much this kiln will hold at one time. Alright guys, I had some questions on the comments from the last video about how much this kiln will hold and kind of the parameters of it and what kind of logistics you have to go through when you think about loading this kiln and what kind of wood that can go in it. Now as you can see, we've been loading nothing but 8/4 walnut in here, but I'm sitting on top of some 8/4 hard maple. And if you have air dried wood, and it doesn't matter if it's the same species or not, as long as it's not a softwood and a hardwood, but if you have the same type of family of woods, hardwoods, let's say for instance like this, and it's air dried and it's the same moisture content and pretty close to the same thickness, then you can mix up species in here because it's all going to dry out about the same at the very end of the cycle. So, but what you don't want to do is, if this 8/4 maple right here was 25% moisture content or 28, and the walnut we looked at already and it's 15, you wouldn't want to do that because you're introducing more moisture into this kiln than the kiln's going to have in it with this walnut. So the walnut will start absorbing some of the moisture when it comes out of this maple, and it really screws up the whole process here. So on that matter, you can put different species in here as long as it's the same moisture content before it comes in, and additionally you want to also have the same thickness or close to it. This is all 8/4 that I got in here. If this maple was 9/4, we'd still be just fine, I think. I don't try to do nothing but air dried wood in this chamber. I may do some green wood every now and then, but most of the time air dried is the way I want to go, and here's the reason on that. This chamber will dry up to 1,000 board feet of lumber per charge or per load. Charge and load is the same thing. This is the kiln term. It's in the manual there. So when I say charge in the kiln, that's putting a load in here. It means the same thing. So it will do up to 1,000 board feet under these parameters though. If you have 1,000 board feet of hardwood, say walnut, cherry, red oak, ash, maple, most of the stuff that we saw on this channel, and it's 4/4 or 5/4, you can put it right in this kiln and dry it in about 30 days. Now if you have 1,000 feet of poplar or pine, which is a faster drying wood, I mean poplar and pine in this part of the country, you can air dry it in 30 days if it's a 1-inch board. It dries extremely fast in the summertime here. But if you have poplar or pine or any other fast drying hardwoods or softwoods, you can only put about 600 board feet in here because it dries so fast it's harder for the kiln to take out that water at that level of or at that speed. So you only get half a load when you're doing those species. We don't do a lot of pine and poplar on this channel, but when I do dry it, I'm going to air dry it first, just because you can get more in here if it's air dried. When you think about it, the reason I want to do air dried wood in this chamber most of the time, there's two very good reasons for it. The first reason is the lumber quality. I think air dried lumber then in the kiln at the very end looks a whole lot better than putting green wood in the kiln right off. Now everybody's got their opinions on that, and until you do it, you don't really know what you're really looking at until you do two different ways and see the boards come out. I took green wood to the kiln I used to go to, and I took air dried wood. And the air dried wood had less defects and had better color, I think, than the green did. Reason number two is you're getting more bang for your buck here. Now the energy cost for this kiln is really an unknown here at my sawmill, because we've not ran it yet. And I'll let you guys know later on as we get these things going in and out on these loads in the kiln how much power I'm having to pay out here extra a month. This is wired into my power to my house. There's no separate service. So I'll just have to watch my power bill and see what the increase is. The other guys I've talked to told me it runs about $30 to $50 extra a month if you run that kiln wide open every month. So it ain't too bad when you think about what you're getting in return. So, to look at it this way, with air dried wood, they say with air dried wood and slabs, about 10 to 11 days and you're good to go when it's dried in this chamber if it's less than 20%. So you could run 3 loads in here, looking at that way, in about a month, a little over a month, about 3 loads. So instead of putting 1 green load in here and running it 30 days and getting 1 load out of it, if you got the room to air dry your products here, or at your place or your mill or what have you, you could get a lot more quantity through your kiln in the same amount of time. So I think that's why air drying is better in the long run. You're getting 3 different loads a month instead of just 1. Now, on loading these slabs in here and checking the moisture content and drying them. Now, on these slabs, they recommend air drying them to less than 20%. You can put green 2-inch and 4-inch thick slabs in a kiln like this, but Lord, it's probably going to take 2 or 3 months to get it dry. That's some thick stuff coming green off the sawmill. My moisture meter only reads up to 32%, and it never reads less than that on these stuff right off the mill because they're so thick and so much water's in them. So the best practice is for slabs, you want to go ahead and air dry them as long as possible to at least 20% or less. And at that time, it's safe to put them in the kiln. Some people say 25% or less. I'm going to do 20% or less just to be on the safe side. But these are all good shape right here. This maple is 15%, and so is the walnut below it, so we're good to go on all of it here. But that's how you dry the slabs in here. The most effectively way of doing it is air drying them as long as you can and getting them less than 20%. And the best reason I can think of also for air drying your slabs, your lumber, or whatever, and not putting it in a kiln when it's green is this right here. When your lumber comes off the mill, it's green, and you air dry it to less than 20 or 25% before it goes in the kiln. Okay, we've already established that. And the reason being, when it gets to 20 or 25%, you're kind of in a safe zone at that point. When it goes in this kiln and it's air dried, as long as you really don't screw the settings up on your kiln and have a catastrophe, you're going to be in pretty good shape when it comes out. The worst things that can happen to lumber, slabs, or what have you, 1-inch boards or 3-inch boards, during the drying process is when you go from green to about 20%. Now, a good friend of mine that's a forester who's taught me a lot about this whole entire business and this whole concept here of drying wood told me this a while back. He told me, he said, the worst things that can happen is really when it comes off the mill till it gets to 20%. He said that's the scariest part of drying lumber and slabs. The worst things have already happened when you get to this point. If it's going to check, if it's going to warp, if it's going to crack, it's going to happen in those parameters right there during that time period when you're going from green to about 20% on the moisture content. So when you're air drying it and getting to this point, you can look at the slabs before you put it in here, and as long as your settings are good to go on the kiln and you're following all the parameters for the species on these kiln settings, you really can't expect a whole lot worse things to happen. So if you got a walnut slab in here that's got a 3-inch check on it, that's probably the worst it's going to get, and that happened during that initial drying process. Well, that's a lot about drying for right now. I'm going to get this kiln loaded up the rest of the way, and we're going to turn it on and get it going. And I will take the camera back there to the control panel, and I'll show you guys the settings I'm going to put this thing on. And I'm going to run it for, well, I'm going to run it until it's dry. I'm hoping 9 to 10 to 11 days tops on getting this walnut down. Meaning it's about 15%. I'm thinking probably 7 days, and 1 day for sterilization will probably be plenty on this stuff. So I will probably do a video here in a few days when we come inside of the kiln and kind of check the moisture content and see how we're doing, and see how much water is coming out of the back in the bucket I got back there, which collects the water that's pulled out of the wood. And that bucket's very important back there. That's how you monitor your progress here. You come out every day and you check your water levels to see if the water's coming out or not. And every day you kind of see how much water is getting pulled from the wood. So, if you guys have any questions I didn't cover in the whole drying process there, just leave me a comment below. And as this channel progresses here this fall, as we put loads in this kiln to take it out, we'll be doing a lot different species. We'll be putting cedar in here, red oak, white oak, and a lot of other things like that, and we'll just kind of learn as we go. I'll be learning just as you guys here watch it go in, because this is all a new thing to me using this kiln. So I appreciate you guys supporting this channel on these videos, and I got one more kiln video after this. This is number 9. Number 10 will be the kiln conclusion when this whole load comes out of the kiln, and we check our moisture levels and see how all the slabs turned out. And at that time I'll probably do a few Q&A questions that come up from this video, if any do come up. And I also talked about the cost of this kiln and the economics of it, on how much it cost me to build this chamber and how much the kiln unit cost itself. We'll get this thing loaded up the rest of the way and turn it on, and we'll see you guys back here in a few days, and we'll do a status update here on how it's going. And hopefully probably Wednesday or Thursday, no, today's Wednesday, hopefully Thursday or Friday or Saturday I'm going to be back to sawmilling, so I'm going to try to do some sawmill videos here in the next few days also, and get back to what we like best on here, which is watching those timbers get turned into lumber. You guys on Patreon, I really appreciate you guys supporting me on there. Anybody's interested in that, I'm doing a few things over there on Patreon, and we'll start doing some more over there, and that kind of helps support this channel and keeps these cameras running here. I'll put a link over here, and if that doesn't work, which it probably won't, I'm terrible on these YouTube settings, and at the end of the video you can see it, or in the description below there's a link over there. So if you guys want to support what I'm doing here, I greatly appreciate it, because the money that it really goes into Patreon is going toward these cameras and kind of helping me get some new equipment here to make these videos better. Let's get this thing loaded up and turned on. This has been a long time coming. I am extremely excited about this. Alright guys, we're at the final step here, finally. It took me all summer to get to this point, but we're finally here. And we got our baffles installed. What this is the leftover insulation from the walls that extruded a polystyrene. I just used it. You can use plywood, but they recommend this stuff right here because it's a lot lighter and kind of easier to put in here and move it out of the way if you need to get to the stack while you're still drying the wood. I got the load baffled, and you guys know what I mean by that. It's sealed off the top of the wood, so the airflow is going to come over this insulation baffle, and it's going to force it to hit the doors and to come down and go through the wood stacks. So that's the main purpose here when you baffle these loads of wood. You want to have that baffle on the very top to prevent the air from going on the face of the wood, and it forces it to go through the stack for the drying process. Judging by my measurements here, and I'm probably off or on by about 50 board feet, this is around 700 board foot of slabs. And like we've said here earlier in the video, it's walnut and maple both. And we're going in here today, we're going to turn it on, and it is September the 20th. So like I said before, we'll come back in a week on a follow-up video just to cover the progress of this kiln and how it's going and the moisture content. And if I do any sawmill videos between now and then, I will probably bring you guys out here with me as I come in here and check the moisture on this wood and see how we're doing. So let's go around now behind the kiln to the control center and turn this thing on. Then come around front and do one more final check to make sure none of this airflow is making our baffles move anywhere we don't want them to be. And seal the doors up, and we're ready to go. We're finally drying some wood here. Like I said on the earlier video, back here behind the kiln, there's a forest right here behind us, where I'm behind the camera rather. So it's really shaded back here. The lighting's going to be horrible, but I'm going to try to give you all a decent understanding of what I'm going to do here so we can know what's going on and how we control this kiln here from the control center. I'm going to turn my fans on right here. That's going to turn on all the external fans. The 2 fans on the deck of the kiln, and also those 3 cheap store-bought box fans on the floor. That switch powers all 5 of our additional fans. Alright, the kiln unit's now turned on, and give it a second here to boot up, and we'll see what kind of reading we're getting on the temperature and the humidity right now. Okay, I'm not sure how good this is going to come up. Like I said, I'm crammed for space, but right here we have the dry bulb temperature, which is 77.5. So right now inside the kiln, 77.5 degrees. The wet bulb temperature, which is the humidity, 69.4. Now this kiln has 4 on and off buttons here, 5 if you count the power button. Right here we have the vent and the humidification, and this kiln is not equipped with neither one of those extra things you can have. The vent would mean those vents inside that I showed you that we have to open if it gets too hot. They make some powered vents that open up on their own to regulate the temperature, and since this kiln's only about 30 yards from my house, I didn't buy those because it ain't gonna kill me to walk out here a few times a day and open up these vents. I'll probably be out here all the time just staring at this thing hoping it works right. Right beside it's a humidification button. That's another feature. I'm not really familiar with it, so I ain't gonna talk about it, but it's got something to do with an added feature you can get in this kiln, and I didn't think I needed it whenever I got this kiln, so we don't have that one either. Compressor and the heat. The compressor is going to be the main function here that pulls the water out of the air, which pretty much sends it out the back of this kiln in the 5-gallon bucket. That's our main system right there, the compressor. And the 2 fans on top of this kiln, whenever this thing's running, those fans are always running. Those 2 fans are at the very top that are pointing at the ceiling. They don't quit running. They stay on constantly, don't matter which function is on. Right beside it we have the heat. We're going to turn the heat on. Okay, our heat is now on, and there's got some small little heat strips or heating elements inside that kiln right below the fans that helps heat up that room. Now we're going to set our dry bulb and our wet bulb temperature, and we're pretty much done. Just as far as that goes, just coming out here and monitoring the humidity and the temperature and making sure it doesn't get too hot and overheat itself. Configuration. We're going to set the dry bulb for 125 degrees. So theoretically, when it reaches 125 degrees, it's going to try to hold itself at 125. But one thing this kiln will do that I've been told is it will get warmer than you want it to. You have no problem heating these things up. The only problem is they get too hot. So once it gets to 125, we're going to monitor this thing extremely closely and probably open up the vents a little, and some guys even crack their doors. And the reason being, once this thing reaches 130 degrees on the dry bulb, which is the overall temperature, the compressor will shut off, and it won't work unless you go inside of the kiln and open it up and hit a reset button. So you don't want to go over 130 degrees, or else you got to climb over your lumber stack and try to get to that kiln unit, and that's going to be a bad day. Now our wet bulb is set at 75 degrees, and that's what you want. And by setting those parameters right there, 125 dry bulb, 125 dry bulb and 75 degrees wet bulb, you're essentially running this kiln what they call wide open. That's max capacity, and that's the way it runs, wide open. And by using air-dried lumber, you can do that. You can start right off by running it wide open. You don't need to work your way up to it. If this was green wood, you'd have to scale back a little bit because you don't want to get too hot too soon, because it's going to dry the wood way too fast. And when you're drying white oak and red oak and it's green right off the mill, you got to be real careful in those first few stages on how fast you want to dry it. So right now both our parameters are set, the dry bulb and the wet bulb, and our inside temperatures are 77.5 and our humidity is 69.0. And something else to point out, until this wet bulb, which is the humidity level, hits 75 degrees, the compressor will not cut on. So right now on the main startup, you just want to get this thing going and drive up that temperature and heat up the kiln. And now we're going to turn on the extra work lights, not heat lamps, but the work lights that I put on that horizontal baffle. Now the only thing left to do is seal up those doors and check this thing periodically, watch the temperature go up, and hopefully in about 24 hours we'll reach the goal of getting the compressor kicking on, which is 75 degrees on the wet bulb, and we'll see some water coming in our bucket over here. Everything's working pretty good. It's running full speed, all the fans, the lights, and all the heaters are going, so we should have no trouble in getting that temperature to go up to where we need it to be for those compressors to kick on. So let's seal up this door, and we're going to call this done. And feel pretty accomplished right now. We got this kiln built, and hopefully it's going to start making some money for us. So appreciate you guys watching. We'll be back here in a few days on the wood-mizer to start sawing up some more timber to feed this kiln, as it's going to be hungry.